I walked into Mom and Dad's house, the smell of garlic bread pulling me in, expecting a cozy family night. Instead, Liam and Liana, my smug twin siblings, sat grinning like they'd won the lottery. "We're getting everything," Liam said, his voice sharp as a blade. Mom nodded, cold and firm, while Dad stared at the table. Everything. The house, the lake cabin I'd poured my savings into, gone to them. My chest tightened, anger burning through the hurt. I'd given so much, yet here I was, blindsided, discarded. How could family feel this cruel? The dining room felt smaller after Liam's words sliced through me. "Everything's ours," he'd said, smirking like a kid who'd cheated at Monopoly. Liana twirled her hair, her giggle a dagger in my side. I sat there, lasagna cooling on my plate, staring at Mom and Dad, waiting for them to laugh it off as some twisted joke. They didn't. Mom's lips tightened, her eyes daring me to argue. Dad just traced the edge of his napkin, silent as a ghost. That's when it hit me. My first real challenge wasn't a deadline or a budget. It was them, my family. Why? I managed, my voice cracking like dry timber. Mom sighed, sharp and impatient. "You've done well, Sarah. Too well, maybe. Liam and Liana need the help." Need? I almost choked. I'd spent years stitching their lives together, late nights balancing their bills with mine, skipping my own dreams to keep their lights on. And now, because I'd clawed my way to a steady job, a tiny apartment, I was the expendable one. The room spun. Their betrayal wasn't just words. It was a wall slamming down between us, built from my own sacrifices. Liam leaned back, arms crossed, his smugness a spotlight on my unraveling. "What, you thought you'd buy their love with your paycheck?" Liana's laugh followed, light and cruel. "Maybe if you weren't so busy being Miss Perfect, you'd get it." I wanted to scream, to flip the table and watch the gravy stain their smug faces. Instead, I gripped my fork, the metal cold against my palm, and forced myself to breathe. They didn't know me. Not the nights I'd cried over their missed calls, not the pride I'd swallowed to keep us whole. They saw a bank account, not a sister. Mom's voice cut through again, clipped and final. "We're just being practical, Sarah. They're still finding their way." Practical? I'd paid for Leanna's art classes, 3 months before she quit. I'd covered Liam's rent when he blew his on a motorcycle he crashed a week later. Practical was me, the fool who thought family meant mutual care, not a one-way drain. My chest burned, a mix of rage and disbelief. I'd been proud of my grit, my ability to rise above our scrappy roots. Now, that strength was my exile. I couldn't sit there anymore. "So that's it?" I said, my voice low but steady, rising like a tide I couldn't hold back. "I'm out because I made something of myself? Because I didn't beg for handouts?" Dad finally looked up, his eyes tired but unyielding. "It's not like that, Sarah. We're proud of you." Proud? The word felt hollow, a cheap trinket tossed to quiet me. I stood, chair scraping the floor, my hands trembling but my spine straight. Proud doesn't cut it when you're punishing me for it. Their faces blurred as I turned away. Liana's sneer, Liam's taunt, Mom's defiance. I'd always been the fixer, the one who didn't flinch when the world got tough. But this was a fight I hadn't trained for. Stepping into the cool Portland night, my breath fogged in the air, mirroring the chaos in my head. They'd drawn a line and I'd crossed it, not out of weakness, but a courage I didn't know I had. For once, I wasn't just reacting. I was choosing me. The night air hit me like a slap as I stormed out, but it couldn't cool the fire raging inside. My family's words echoed, Liam's smirk, Leanna's laugh, Mom's cold, "You're too successful." Too successful? I sank into my car, gripping the wheel, my knuckles white. The truth clawed its way up, raw and jagged. For years I'd carried them, not just with words or hugs, but with cash. Quiet transfers that kept their world spinning while mine stalled. I'd paid their mortgage when Dad's hours got cut, funded Liam's guitar lessons he ditched after a month, even bought Liana that fancy camera she needed for her blog. All of it swallowed in silence. I drove home, the Portland skyline blurring past, and memories flooded in, unwelcome guests I couldn't shake. I saw myself at 23, skipping a trip to Seattle with friends to cover their electric bill. At 27, working overtime to fix their leaky roof while they toasted marshmallows by the fire pit I'd built. I'd told myself it was love, duty, the glue holding us together. But now I saw the secret they'd buried. I was never the daughter they cherished. I was the safety net they stepped on, the one they could afford to ignore. Back in my apartment, I paced the hardwood floor, the the silence deafening. My phone buzzed, Mom's name flashing like a warning light. I answered, dreading her voice. "Sarah, you're overreacting," she snapped, her tone sharp as broken glass. "We didn't mean to hurt you. You're just selfish for making this about money." Selfish? The word landed like a punch. I laughed, bitter and low. Selfish? I gave you everything, Mom. My savings, my weekends, my peace. And you call me selfish because I won't keep bleeding for you? She huffed, dismissive. You always twist things. Liam and Liana need us. You don't. I froze, the phone trembling in my hand. Need us. Not me, just their precious twins, the ones who stumbled through life while I held the ladder. The tension coiled tighter, a knot in my chest I couldn't untie. What about what I need? I whispered, my voice breaking. She didn't answer. The line went dead, and I stood there, alone, the weight of her silence crushing me. I sank onto the couch, staring at the coffee table where I'd once spread out their bills, calculating how to stretch my paycheck. A photo caught my eye. Us at the coast years back, me sandwiched between Liam and Liana, all grins and sunburns. I'd paid for that trip too, hadn't I? The realization stung. They'd never thanked me, never noticed. To them, I was the steady one, the rock they could lean on without looking back. But rocks crack under pressure, and I felt mine splintering now. The walls seemed to close in, my breath shallow. They didn't just overlook me, they resented me for it, for building a life while they floundered. Selfish, they'd said. The label burned, isolating me further, a spotlight on my unraveling trust. I grabbed a glass of water, hands shaking, and stared out at the city lights. Each flicker mocked me, a reminder of the years I dimmed myself for them. The tension wasn't just in that dinner. It was a thread woven through my life, pulling tighter until I couldn't breathe. I wasn't their hero, I was their fool. And that truth, it cut deeper than I'd ever imagined. The dining room pulsed with a silence that felt alive, heavy, suffocating. Liam's smirk lingered in the air, Liana's giggle a splinter under my skin. Mom's eyes narrowed, daring me to push back, while Dad stayed glued to his plate, avoiding the storm brewing in me. I'd been unraveling all night, threads of hurt and rage pulling loose, but now I felt the snap. My chair scraped the floor as I stood, the sound sharp, final. "I'm done," I said, my voice low but steady, cutting through their smug bubble. "Done being your ATM. Done with all of it." Mom flinched, her fork clattering against her plate. "Sarah, sit down," she hissed, like I was a kid throwing a tantrum. But I wasn't a kid anymore. I was 32, bone-tired, and staring at a truth I'd dodged too long. "No," I shot back, hands trembling but fists clenched. "You don't get it, do you? I've poured everything into this family, my money, my time, my heart, and you've never once cared." "Not really." Liam snorted, leaning back. "Oh, here we go, St. Sarah's pity party." Liana chimed in, voice dripping venom. "Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with playing savior, you'd see we don't need you." That was it, the crack that broke the dam. I laughed, a jagged hollow sound, and turned to them all. "Need me? I paid for this house you're sitting in. I fixed the furnace last winter when you whined about the cold. I sent you cash for groceries when Dad's check bounced, and now you're leaving me nothing because I didn't fail like you wanted?" The words spilled out, hot and unstoppable, each one a brick tumbling from the wall I'd built to protect them. Dad finally looked up, his face pale. "Sarah, we just thought." "Thought what?" I cut him off, my voice rising, shaking the air. "That I'd keep bailing you out forever? That I don't deserve anything because I fought for my life instead of begging for yours?" The room went still, their faces frozen, shock, anger, I couldn't tell. But then it hit me, the real gut punch. They didn't love me for me. They loved what I gave them. I was a paycheck, a fixer, a shadow they could lean on and forget. Not a daughter, not a sister, just a means to an end. I grabbed my coat, the wool rough against my fingers, and headed for the door. Mom's voice chased me, shrill and desperate. "If you walk out, don't expect us to beg you back." I paused, hand on the knob, my heart hammering. Beg me back? They'd never begged for anything but money. I turned, meeting her glare. "Good," I said, my voice cold, resolute. "I'm not coming back to be your doormat." The door slammed behind me, a thunderclap in the quiet night, and I stepped into the rain-soaked street, my breath fogging in the chill. Tears burned my eyes as I climbed into my car. But beneath them, something else stirred. Relief, sharp and bittersweet. I'd faced the worst of them, the ugliest truth, and chosen myself. The road ahead blurred, rain streaking the windshield, but for the first time, it felt like mine. They'd tried to chain me with guilt, but I'd broken free. Not just from their bank account, from their grip on my soul. And that was everything. The rain hadn't stopped when I got home, drumming against my apartment windows like a heartbeat I couldn't ignore. I sat on the couch, my laptop glowing in the dim light, and pulled up my bank account. There they were, those recurring payments staring back at me. $1,200 for their mortgage, $400 for their phone bill, a lifeline I'd thrown them for years. My finger hovered over the cancel button, trembling. This wasn't just money, it was me cutting the cord, stepping off the treadmill I'd run since I was old enough to work. I clicked. Once, twice, done. The confirmations flashed and my chest loosened, like I'd shed a coat I didn't know was choking me. The next morning, my phone lit up. Mom's name, insistent, angry. I let it ring, steeling myself, then answered. "Sarah, what the hell?" she barked, her voice jagged. "The bank called. They're threatening to take the house. How could you?" I swallowed, the guilt clawing at me, but I held firm. "How could I? Mom, I've paid your way for a decade. My rent went up, and I still sent you cash. You chose Liam and Lyanna over me. I'm choosing myself now." She gasped, theatrical, wounded. "You're abandoning us." Abandoning? The irony stung. They'd abandoned me first, left me out of their will like I was a stranger who'd overstayed her welcome. Hours later, Liam texted, "Real classy, sis. Hope you're happy screwing us over." Lyanna followed, her message dripping with sarcasm. "Guess you're too good for us now." I stared at the words, my stomach twisting. Happy? No. Free? Maybe. I'd spent years fixing their messes, Liam's totaled car I'd replaced, Lyanna's emergency shopping sprees I'd funded. They didn't see a sister, they saw a wallet. Now without my checks, their world was crumbling, and they blamed me. The house might go, their phones might cut off. And yet, part of me ached, those old instincts whispering I should fix it, like always. I walked to the kitchen, poured a coffee, and watched the steam curl up. That's when it sank in. This was bigger than money. Canceling those payments was my flag in the ground, a symbol of a life I was clawing back. I wasn't just their bank, I'd been their crutch, their excuse to coast. Now they'd have to stand up or fall, and I wouldn't catch them. The thought brought a rush of relief, sharp and clean, but it tangled with sadness. I'd lost them, not just their voices, but the dream of a family that loved me back. Days passed and the calls kept coming. Dad's quiet pleas, Mom's shrill guilt trips. "We're struggling, Sarah. Is this what you wanted?" No, I didn't want their struggle. I wanted their respect, something they'd never offered. I silenced my phone, the quiet wrapping around me like a shield. Outside, Portland's gray sky mirrored my mood, but inside, something flickered, a spark of pride. I'd acted, finally, not out of spite, but survival. The consequences weren't pretty. Creditors circling them, tension I could feel through the miles, but they weren't mine to carry anymore. That night, I stood by my window, coffee gone cold in my hands. The city lights blinked, indifferent, and I let the tears come, soft, not bitter. I'd freed myself from their chains, but the weight of what we'd been lingered. They'd face their mess. I'd face mine. And somehow, in that jagged space between loss and liberty, I found a fragile, honest peace. Weeks after I cut them off, the fallout took a darker turn. I came home late, exhausted from work, and found my apartment door sealed shut, thick, ugly foam oozing from the frame. My heart sank. I knew it was Liam, his petty revenge for me daring to walk away. I called the cops, hands shaking as I watched them pry it open, the mess a loud echo of his spite. "This is personal," the officer said, shaking his head. "Personal?" Yeah, it was. I demanded he pay for the damage. $2,000 straight up. He texted back, furious, "You're a traitor." I didn't flinch. Traitor or not, I was done cleaning up his chaos. Mom called next, her voice dripping with guilt. "Sarah, fix this. He's your brother." "Fix it? After he trashed my home?" I laughed, cold and steady. "No, Mom, he's your problem now." She hung up, but the pressure didn't stop. Dad's voicemails, Lyanna's snarky jabs, all trying to drag me back into their orbit. I blocked them, one by one, the silence settling like a bomb. They wanted control, not me. And for once, I wouldn't bend. Life shifted after that. Work felt lighter. I took on projects I loved, booked a weekend hike I'd always postponed. The air tasted different, crisper mine. Sure, the sting of their betrayal lingered, a bruise I'd carry, and I knew they'd stir trouble again. Liam's temper wasn't done. But standing in my repaired doorway, I saw it clear. Their rejection had unshackled me. Freedom wasn't just a word, it was this moment, this quiet strength blooming where their chaos used to live. They'd tried to break me. Instead, they'd set me free. Thanks for watching my story. It's been a wild ride. If you felt this, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Tell me your thoughts below. I read every comment. See you in the next one.